talk about this a bit more in detail. And for that, Mukesh Kapila joins us live from Geneva, and he is a professor of global health and humanitarian affairs at the University of Manchester. Welcome to you on this very important day, 8 billion. Mukesh, how do we share the planet with 8 billion people? How do we do that sustainably?
Well, the good news is that the planet is actually producing enough for our needs, despite all the problems and conflicts and climate change that you are seeing. The bad news is that it's unequally distributed, and all the 8 billion don't have equal access to the resources they need. So the challenge is on how are we going to make sure we have a fairer world and how all the generations, old and young, can benefit from it. And I think that's where the stresses and strains are going to lie in the period ahead before the population finally stabilizes and starts declining.
And it is incredible, isn't it? It is going to focus now on just a few countries, right? The growth over, let's say, from here till 2037. So won't there be priorities on those countries that will be the ones that will deliver the biggest growth?
Well, the countries which are the youngest are countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and the countries that are oldest are in Europe, North America, and increasingly China. So what that means is that they're facing different problems. Young countries with youthful populations, they're going to have the challenges of finding enough jobs for people and ensuring that there is stability and that younger people's aspirations are met, because if not, we're going to have trouble. Mm-hmm. The older populations, the older countries, if you wish, their challenge is how do you meet the needs of healthcare, for example, of social security, of aging in those particular populations. So the old and the young, and they're distributed unequally around the world, will have to find a way of balancing. Now, in the past, this problem was solved through migration. People went from rural to urban or from one country to another country. But these options are no longer so easy, and they have their own problems, as we know. And so I think that's what politicians and policymakers are going to have to address in the period ahead.
And what will this mean for the impact on the climate, especially when we look at where that growth will be concentrated on in just 8 countries until 2050? The Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Tanzania.
Yeah, what it means is that for those particular countries, they are going to have more challenges for education, for healthcare, for environmental protection, and there's going to be more competition for resources, whether it's energy or for water. And I think some countries are large countries like the DRC. They could probably accommodate those populations more because it's relatively underpopulated. DRC is a vast country. On the other hand, and so is Tanzania for that matter. So, I wouldn't look upon this as a story of unmitigated doom and gloom. It's a story for really policy challenges that can be met provided population growth is managed in an environmentally respectful manner. And with the technologies in our display, and by the way, urbanization can be as much of a good thing as a bad thing, because urbanization actually reduces your carbon footprint because populations are more concentrated. So you can bring services to them better rather than scattering them all over the countryside, which should be used for greening and growing crops. So it's a kind of balanced picture that will have to be brought about through proper policies. It's not all doom and gloom is my main point.
No, that is a great point. And what does it mean for cities? Because so many of us, of course, live in cities, and you mentioned just there the move from rural to urban, and you said, living in cities is a good thing.
I think living in cities is a good thing overall. Mm-hmm. Having said that, of course, we have inherited these cities like London or Istanbul, where I was recently, and what you see they're kind of ramshackle and grown in all directions. So the challenge for urban planners is going to be to reorder those cities so that they're more efficient, so people don't have to travel too far, so that they are more carbon neutral. And I think urban gardening or urban farming is going to come into its own. also, I think new forms of technology are going to mean that access to services, whether it's transport services or healthcare services or education services, are going to have to be relooked at so that people are able to access them at less carbon cost than they do at the present time. But overall, I think cities are going to become more livable, if only under the pressure of numbers, and therefore the social and political pressures that's going to happen. So again, on there, I am concerned, but I'm not necessarily over pessimistic.
And that is a great note to end on. I like your positivity. Thank you so much. Great to have you on the program, Mukesh Kapila, live there from Geneva.